Hello, welcome to White Space, DCD's weekly roundup of news from the data centre field. This week it's been an exciting week. We've had DCD Europe in London, and we bring a guest, Cole Crawford of Stacking IT.
Hello. Welcome, Cole. Thank you.
Hi.
So how did the show go, people?
Yeah, see, I wanted to kick off with the first pictures of Vapor Chamber, but I think Cole is in a better position to talk about it.
Yes.
You think we should allow him to start?
Why not? So first off, I think the event went great. From at least where I'm sitting, I'm seeing a lot of traction around the apps and technology that sort of lives north of the rack, and I'm sure that White Space, as you guys continue this journey, that will become increasingly important and popular with your audience. But the chamber, I mean, what can I say? It's open, it's based on open standards, it's based on open source. If you're familiar with the Open Compute project, it's open rack compatible. We've given away OpenDCRE, which is the open data center runtime environment.
It was great to see it and be able to walk round and climb inside it.
Yeah, it's quite an unusual thing, because there was nothing else like that on the show floor, and I think like part of the reason why people came is we were like, what the hell is that?
Yeah, that's sort of it looks like a donut, apparently, to George Rocket, the founder, and see, other people were calling it TARDIS. So if you're
there's a certain food theme. The man who owns a restaurant eats donuts.
Yes,
I don't think it looks like donut. It looks quite svelte and quite.
That's what I think.
Sleek.
Yeah, you're just trying to get on my good side.
Here.
How many people stood inside it and said, ready to beam down? It will get pretty hot inside that hot column in operation.
Yes.
So what was I mean, in terms of the people coming up and saying, wow, what were they particularly, in terms of potential buyers, what were they thinking was the buying point for them?
Yeah, so I think it's for them. I think it's for the folks on the floor. It really was segmented into two distinct types of conversations. One was around the technology, and we never thought to include rectification and battery backup and fire suppression and fire detection, all in a round thing, because that doesn't seem to make sense from a square room space perspective. But when you remove the hot aisle completely out of a cold hot aisle environment, you begin to understand the space savings, and that was one sort of question. The other, or conversation, and the other conversation was economics. And the reality is, this world has to migrate into accepting a path forward where the application is important to them, where cloud is important to them. We spoke on stage at the beginning how data centers need to be looking to the edge, and the human factor is the edge. Brandon from the BBC actually, was sort of maybe famously quoted for saying that now.
Yes. People are the edge.
People are the edge, and that if they're the edge, then and we're collecting all of this data, then shouldn't data centers be close to where the data is being generated and analyzed? And if that's the case, the colos are in a distinct advantage versus the hyperscale cloud providers, because they can build small and many. They're real estate companies. They have actual business processes that allow them to do that. So the economics of sort of the value proposition that the chamber offers you at roughly $3 million US per megawatt is less than half of anybody else in the industry, and that's something.
Yeah. Just put it in the room. It doesn't need sort of like raised floors or any sort of like special arrangements. Could put it down here.
Exactly. I mean, in this space, and for those on camera, you can't see the rest of this room, but we're probably looking at maybe 100 meters squared. Is that about right?
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Pretty good conversion.
Yeah.
So in this, you could almost fit. You could fit over 500 kilowatts of data center space in here with no retrofit. In less than a day. In less than a day, you can have a data center in this room.
Right.
And I would challenge anybody in the industry to say we can do the same.
Exciting.
Well, look at the coverage on the show and in the website. to
Yes.
get more detail about that.
There were people at the show who want to take it even further into people's basements, actually really in people's basements. Jens Struckmeyer of Cloud and Heat was talking about the, I call it distributed heating, but he's got a better name for it, I'm sure, where you have a heat and cloud server in your basement, and the realization that this actually could be useful from the networking point of view in taking the data close to people.
There is a company in Germany that's doing this as well, where they rent out your closet or they rent out your garage, and then in the winter that is your heat source.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Meanwhile, the rest of the media came to the show, and my favourite headline from the coverage that other sites gave was, Coca Cola is using the IoT to create new Coke flavours. So if you ever had doubts about the value of the IoT, now you know. The IoT will have real benefits. Finally, new flavours of Coke. Not half a mile from where we were, there was actual news happening when Telecity lost power to its data centre. This is a comparatively old data centre they inherited from Red Bus called Sovereign House, but yet it still carries something like 10% of the traffic of the UK's internet. So there was some impact when it fell over. It lost power, and apparently the UPS failed as well. We have to be slightly theoretical here because Telecity has yet to make any public statement about this. But what then happened was that they went to fix the broken UPS overnight, and whatever they did then, they managed to cause a further interruption to the power to the data centre, which power distribution experts tell me simply shouldn't happen. When the UPS isn't working, you take it completely out of the system and fix it fully before you put it back. So we don't know what's gone on there, and we're waiting to hear.
And talking about that, because that is an outage, but it's an average outage.
We were lucky compared with elsewhere, weren't we, Matt?
Exactly. So last week in Azerbaijan, they actually lost 90% of their domestic traffic when a data center fire took down the telecoms facility owned by Delta Telecom. Wow. Now, Delta Telecom sort of routes 90% of domestic traffic in Azerbaijan, the other 10% being Azer Telecom, I believe. And yeah, for about 8 hours, because of a fire, they had to call in, like there were firefighters on the scene, and it sounded quite serious. And the sort of like the government had to make a statement, and ministers had to get involved because it was huge. Interestingly,
because it wasn't just like virtually the internet access for almost the entire country went for several hours.
Yes, and mobile networks as well. That's the interesting thing, because like some of the mobile traffic also went through these data centers, so you couldn't even make a call, you know.
And news from the world of DCIM.
Yes, the exciting world of DCIM,
Can
where
we really
things
take
are
any more
happening all the time. Anyway, CA Technologies, a large, huge American software vendor, is actually getting out of DCIM, and they're saying that, we want to we've seen opportunities elsewhere, and we want to spend the resources elsewhere. So everybody who's bought CA DCIM, and I think Facebook, at least in part, runs on CA DCIM, or they developed something in partnership. I think you've mentioned.
No idea.
No?
No idea.
Anyway, Facebook is listed as one of their early customers, and apparently it was great. People who used it, but they will not be making it anymore.
Well, some people are saying that as DCIM is finally about to take off, they're getting out at the wrong time. Is that?
I think that, I guess from my perspective, DCIM was sort of the great promise for, everything from asset management to workload orchestration and increased telemetry in the data center. And I think, really where the state of the union is there is when you're trying to do things over a proprietary environment or a proprietary protocol or through a proprietary dashboard, it becomes a lock-in discussion for the end user, and no one wants to make a bad bet. So if you're going to invest millions of dollars per data center to get into bed with the technology, even with a company like CA, it's hard to hedge that kind of bet, right? It's hard to make that investment when something like this can obviously happen. Here we now have this deployed infrastructure at thousands or tens of thousands of dollars per rack, and now we've got to find an entirely different solution. So there'll be people in this space up a creek with no one to call, with a DCIM solution that is now deprecated, and that's a bad place to be in IT.
Yeah. And CA have sort of actively resisted the trend to open software and open hardware. They're as proprietary as things get. So,
Okay. So they got what's coming to them.
I wouldn't like to say that. That sounds sort of threatening. We're taking on CA Technologies.
Can I go now?
Yes. So, bad news from the US government's data center consolidation efforts.
I find this quite amusing. I wrote an article about security, data center security, you can read it. It's on the site. But one of the points I made was the amount of money which the US government is spending on security, and the relatively low comeback, that's a really low quality that you get. You don't get bang for your buck, in other words. You're not getting what you should get for the spend. And then this story about the fact that the US government has suddenly found 2,000 extra data centres. It did an audit.
I like the way that they're keeping track of the number of data centres they've got. And they started the initiative in 2010, and they said, we've got about 3,000 data centres.
We need to consolidate.
And so a few years later they said, actually we had a few more, but we've consolidated. We've lost
That's
about...
right. We've now got 7,000.
Every time they report back, they say, we've found some more, but we've consolidated. They've now removed more than the data centres than they thought they had in the first place. They've now consolidated away 3,000 data centres, and yet they still have 11,000.
11,700.
And climbing. A year ago, they only had 9,000 data centres, and they're consolidating away, and now they have 11,700.
In the famous words of Bill Clinton, it depends on what the definition of consolidate is.
So there's some more interesting news from the show. So we've had the executive director of Iceotope. They're a British liquid cooling startup.
And they finally sold a product.
Finally sold a product.
Petagen supercomputers,
Yes.
liquid cooled, and they sold one to...
University of Derby?
With money from Rolls-Royce.
Yes, but as they did this, they also announced a bit of a change of direction. Now, whereas before Isotope were gunning for the HPC market, where they really sort of fit and are well loved and respected, now apparently they want to do your average mainstream servers. They want to cool everything. They want to cool your servers from Dell or HP, which some people are divided on whether that's a good or a bad idea. I think, Cole, you have an opinion on that.
Listen, first I'll say that personally I like to bet on racetracks, not horses. Mm-hmm. That being said, some horses are designed and bred to win slightly easier than others, and the value of liquid cooling in a co-location provider as a general purpose solution, I want hybrid or private cloud in this colo, I think that's an uphill battle. I think it's an uphill battle to sell the remediation process, to sell the logistics process for when parts fail. And again, if you end up investing in an architecture where you don't have a multi-sourced solution, what happens in the worst case scenario of a liquid cooled company going out of business when you've got hundreds or thousands of kilowatts on that technology? I think the technology is awesome. In fact, I could see a reference architecture where they could exist on an open rack. That's not entirely impossible to envision and have a very dense, we've seen, I think, in open compute land, a 35 or a 45 kilowatt rack, but I think you could go upwards from there with that solution.
Yes.
It's just what can be open about it.
Yes, we did have an open compute project rack launched this week with liquid cooling from Aquarius.
Yeah.
Or Aquarius is the product, Aquila's the company.
That's right.
Yes, do you know anything much about that one?
I do. I know Bob quite well.
Excellent.
Bob Boltz, yes. And I think that's a good fit for many applications. I think that they're certainly in the HPC space, or if you want to rent a basement and do Bitcoin mining, I think that's a great thing to do, right? If you need less infrastructure in the building, I believe that there is a place for liquid cooling on an open rack in some sort of thing that you call a data center.
And finally, the best thing about shows is the swag, isn't it? Max, you got the best swag at DCD, didn't you?
Yes. I really do like this. So this is a genset model. It's from Cummins. It's a QSK 95 series genset, and just in a little bit, I'm going to try to build one.
Excellent. I think, well, we need some reliability down here. We need that genset. Thank you for watching, everyone.
Somebody we spoke about certainly does.
Thank you for watching, everyone. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.